Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JustinoTweets and at She Knows Arsenal. Welcome to another show. And yeah, I'm struggling to figure out what to talk about because we haven't had any games. We did not have a game this weekend. So usually we'd be kind of reviewing the game, but we don't have that opportunity. So yeah, I thought we could probably do a Q&A. Haven't done one in a very, very long time, probably since the beginning of the transfer window. And some of you guys have already sent in some questions, so we'll go through those. But please feel free to put your questions in the chat box so that I can see them and potentially answer them. I may not be able to answer all of them, and some of them will be repeats, but I will try to get to as many as I possibly can in this hour-long session. It'll probably be about an hour long. So yeah, I'm sorry I haven't been here as much lately. Over the last week or so, I just needed a small break with everything, new work coming in, just things changing in my personal life. I just needed a couple of days, and not having a game gave me the opportunity to kind of reset. And so now shows will be on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, no matter what. That's the schedule that I put together. I just think it's easier that way. All the shows are going to be pretty much the same format. And then you guys, if you're a member, you'll get a members only mailbag show once a month, or even maybe twice. But I needed to get my schedule together. I needed to recalibrate, because after the transfer window, it was just a little bit of burnout. Then we went into the season and I was like, okay, I just needed a little bit of a reset. And so I got that now, which is great. And we can hop into some more Arsenal chit chat. There's 30 of you guys in here already, which is amazing. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I know it's a weird time as well. It's 9:30 in the morning here in the UK. And so if you guys don't like this time, let me know. Yeah, this is the best time for me to get this done. That's all I'm really going to say. But yeah, and hopefully the internet holds up. Lloyd has a question. I will go ahead and star it just to make sure I don't miss out on it. C. Walder says, I am reading that the Premier League will resume on Friday. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions around whether or not our games will go on. I did read, this is coming from John Cross, that games will probably resume this weekend, but Chelsea, Liverpool, and Arsenal's matches are uncertain to go forward. I think because, ours is a London derby, and there's a lack of policing. There's issues around the policing. There's also issues around, is there going to be enough broadcast space or something? Because they're going to be obviously doing a lot of broadcasting around the Queen's death. So it's one of those where I still think it's up in the air. But what is kind of annoying to me is just we need to know what you guys are going to do, because it felt like the first postponement where you could give them some leeway, obviously, because of what happened. But it took a while for them to come to that agreement. And I think it took a while because they probably didn't really want to cancel the games. Do you know what I mean? And so it was a harder decision than maybe it seemed like. And these next round of fixtures, they don't really need to postpone them. But I understand that, the funeral is on Monday. They have policing issues and things like that. But from a footballing perspective, the last thing we really need is for these games to be put in places beyond January, and just really condensing that schedule, because there's nowhere to put it before the World Cup. So football fans just want to know when their team is going to play. They just want to know what's going on. And it feels like this is taking a while to figure out the logistics of what can happen this weekend. And so hopefully we'll get some more information on that soon. Amira says, hey, Jess, we missed you. It's been a while since your last show. Yeah, sometimes I just have these moments where I'm I just cannot stream, and I won't stream if I'm not going to give you guys my best. I will not stream if I'm going to, be, lacking energy and not being able to give you guys my 110%. So yeah, It rarely happens. I usually am pretty reliable, but yeah, these past couple of days I was like, okay, I need a break. Ashoke says, "Hey Jess, how are you? I'm new to your channel." Well, great. I'm glad you're here, and you've decided to share some time with me. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Make sure all of you guys do. That would be amazing. Sink says she was such an Arsenal fan. She gave us a break, nice break for Partey to heal as she left for the top four push. I hear you. I hear you. Don One says no Brentford game on the weekend, so Arsenal will play a strong side against PSV. Um, well, the PSV game is also, you know, under threat. That's another part of it is, PSV looked like it was going to go forward, but now because, obviously we're playing here in London, it's going to be like an issue, so we still have to wait and get confirmation on that as well. And everything is just kind of up in the air. And I'm sure this might be frustrating for the team. Um, let's see. I'm just starring some of the questions while we just get the little pleasantries out of the way. Lewis says, nope, Prem games are canceled this week. Well, that's not what I'm seeing. Is there like a confirmation of that or no? Because I'm seeing so many different things, to be honest. There's so many different rumors out there that they will get canceled, they may not get canceled. And so let's just wait for like an actual update that we can rely upon. Let's see. Jovi says, "Hey Jess, hey, how are you?" Mafia Boss says, "Morning, Jess. Good morning to you as well." Monday will be a bank holiday. It will. Mafia Boss says, "I think it's down to policing." Yeah, so we'll have to see. Like for me, like I'm not really that I'm not really that like stressed out about it in terms of like we'll have to play those games at some point. This is the reality of football sport, is that things don't always go to plan and you have to just deal with the challenges that come as they are presented to you. And so if we have to play these games at a later date, then it just is what it is, and it's the only thing. It's like I just want to know what kind of content I'm going to be able to create, but beyond that, it's like if they need that time to, you know, uh have the funeral and we can't have the games, so be it. Like I really don't have any skin in the game and in that regard. So it is what it is. I just want to know what we're doing. That's pretty much what it is. Let's see, Zach 10. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, and also just like put your questions in if you have one. I love that. All right, let's see. Zach 10 says, "Do you think Arsenal can realistically improve their finishing potency enough to kill off games against all sides this season?" I think that's a really good question. One of my biggest concerns going into the season was that, and maybe I didn't put it the right way. The way that I phrased it was, there's not enough goals in this team. And I know that some people don't like that because then it makes it seem like I'm being judgmental or harsh on Saka, Martinelli, and Gabriel Jesus. But the reality is, and Odegaard as well. But for me, it's not there's not enough goals. There's a lack of clinical finishing and a lack of ruthlessness in front of goal from our team. And we saw it last season, and we're seeing shades of it again this season. I think the only game that we can say that we were truly clinical in and ruthless was Leicester, and we scored 4 goals in that game. And I think that's the um the height of this team, like the ceiling of this team is being able to just unpick, whatever team it is, and just whether it's set pieces, whether it's, intricacy around the box, or individual brilliance. This team has all of those things, but what it really comes down to is like, what are you going to do when the pressure is on? And I do think that beyond that game, we haven't been clinical. Fulham, not clinical. Villa, not clinical. Man United, not clinical. Zurich, not clinical. So we're getting 2 goals ish a game, which is like, I know it seems like, well, why are we so stressed out? We are getting 2 goals a game on average, but I'm seeing way more dominance and possession and opportunities to kill off a game, and we're not getting that because we get a goal and then it takes a long time for us to get the second goal, or, it takes us a whole 2 halves to get 2 goals, like, it's just we are not clinical, and so I don't know if I see this as something being solved with the players that we have currently. I think that everybody's different, but Gabriel Jesus has never been super clinical. That's just how he's been his entire career. He's an excellent footballer. He's technically brilliant. He's physically um, above any player that we have in our team in terms of being able to use his body and maneuver around pressure and things like that. He works harder than anybody else, but he has this little gap in his game where he's not as clinical as he should be. And so I've never counted him as somebody to be able to get us 20 goals a season. I think he's going to allow us to have more going on up front, make us more of a threat. With his pressing, and he's actually pretty good at getting assists as well. But if you think he's going to get 25 to 30 goals this season, it's not going to happen. And so with him, you already kind of know you're not going to get that. With Saka and Martinelli, I still believe that we are relying upon very young players to do a big job. When you have a player like Gabriel Jesus, who is essentially our version of a Firmino, we see that like the best teams, like especially in their peak, Mo Salah and Mane were getting 20 something goals a season. And I think Saka and Martinelli will probably be around the 10 to 12 goals this season, and that may not be enough. And we also have kind of an issue, not an issue, but we don't have a midfield that scores. Thomas Partey and Xhaka are not going to get you that many goals. And then you have Odegaard, who seems to have this mental block. And I think out of everybody, he's the most frustrating because he does get into really good positions and just decides not to shoot. He just decides not to shoot. And so I think with the current crop of players that we have, because I feel like they're more creators first and not goal scorers first. Martinelli, which is strange, like I'll say this about both Gabriel Martinelli and Gabriel Jesus, is that they're both in Brazil were more goal scorers than facilitators in their roles. Like they just were. Gabriel Jesus was way more clinical and a lot more ferocious in front of goal when he was in Brazil. And Gabriel Martinelli was as well, especially like in his first year at Arsenal. And now that he's rounded his game a little bit, I do feel like he defers a little bit too much. I want him to shoot more. So those two are strange, but yeah, Odegaard, he just needs to shoot more. He gets in such good positions, and when he does shoot, a lot of times it goes in the goal. But what I see is like when he has the wide, like the open opportunity, he won't shoot. But then when he's blocked by 2 or 3 players, he will shoot. It's strange. And so, yeah, I think with this current group of players, we need players that are shoot first. And it's frustrating because when you have players like that, they tend to mess up moves. Like they tend to, you know, be frustrating because it's like, why didn't you just pass it? But I do think we lack a couple of players in those positions that are just like, oh, I'm gonna shoot. Oh, I'm gonna shoot. Oh, I'm gonna shoot. Yeah. So with this current group, I don't think there's enough. And I think it would be a good idea for Arsenal to look for somebody in January just to make sure that we have enough goals just to bolster that group. Because you're already seeing now that they're not struggling to score goals, but it should be more. We should be able to score more. Do you know what I mean? Like we should be putting more of these chances away. And personally, for me, for the Manchester United game, I did think that had we had been more clinical in those moments that we were in the box and just literally just tried to shoot, we probably would have beat them. Like it just is wild to me. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Um, let's see. Clucking Bell says, "Do you believe ESR will be leaving this in the summer?" No. Um, I don't. I don't. I think they gave him the number 10 and they expect him to be a part of the long-term future of the club, but he needs to remain fit. I do think that he is struggling with fitness, like, and that's his biggest downfall. He's such a different player to what we have. He's one of our best finishers, and he has a different skill set than Odegaard and Vieira that would be really useful for us, but he just can't stay fit. But do I think Arsenal are ready to pull the trigger on him? No, because again, they gave him the number 10. He's a part of that group, and I think they are counting on him. But one more season without being able to sustain like a long period of form, I do think will leave his future in question later on, you know. But he's what, 22? How old is Emil? He's 22 years old now, you know. So once he turns like in July, he'll be 23. Like we're moving into your prime ages and when you start getting into 24 years old. So yeah, like he does need to make sure he stays fit, but I don't think he'll leave. Like I don't think he will leave. I don't think the club will try to sell him. There's some other players we can look at to sell in the summer before him. Let's see. Um, Emmanuel says, "Who do you think is the best player in the Arsenal squad? Like the closest to being called world class?" Um, uh, Gabriel Jesus. I think he's the best player in the squad. And, you know, I said it over the summer when we signed him that once he plays with us, you will see that the gap is there. You know, the gap is there. Some people were saying that he wasn't that much better than what we had. And I thought that that was pretty funny. Like, that was very funny because he's a level above the players that we have. And that's not to say that Saka and Martinelli are not great. They just are not on his level. And so I think if Gabriel Jesus keeps it up the way that he has the season and he can make sure that he at least hits 15, 20 goals in all competitions, he will be getting close to being considered world class, you know, in his position. And then maybe the next one would be Thomas Partey, but he's not fit enough to really be considered really. So those are the two that I would say. Let's see. I had a couple of questions that came up on Twitter, so I wanna make sure that I, do those too. Um, this one came from Godwin. Godwin asked, "Do we keep Partey next summer or ship him out, then get a capable replacement? Who are your preferred replacements?" Um, I don't think we need to ship him out. I think we need to bring in somebody that's better than El Neni and better than Zambi. Like I've always felt that way. We've known about Thomas Partey's injury issues, and you know, it doesn't seem to be getting any better. But do I think it would be useful to have somebody like Thomas Partey in your squad to play 20, 25 games a season? Yeah, I do. And when we do get into the Champions League, that's the type of player that you want playing in those games. And so I do think instead of weakening the squad and selling him and still having a gap for a set, we need two. Like I think that's what that frustrates me a little. Sorry, guys. The idea that we don't need two central defensive midfielders, we do. And I think the only reason why we haven't gotten it is because Arsenal are like, well, we're in Europa League, it's fine. But once we get into the Champions League, I think our squad can handle Thomas Partey for 20 to 25 games a season, and then somebody else, a younger replacement that can also be a part of that rotation with El Neni, he's not good enough. He never has been. I've never believed in this, you know, him getting better. He's average. He needs to leave this summer. And then Sambi is not a number six. Like he just isn't not in where he is right now in his development. And I don't even think long term he is because his defensive awareness is not there. And I know that people are saying that you can teach it, but I just feel like at 21, like he is an eight and he's probably not a six based on what we've seen. So I think you keep Thomas Partey, you know, and then keep him and you will phase him out eventually. Like he'll probably leave on a free. That's the thing that I think people are not really taking into account is that Thomas Partey will probably leave Arsenal on a free. Like he probably will just run out his contract. Nobody's going to buy him for the wages that we have him on. So you keep him and you bring in somebody like a Moises Caicedo. You could bring in who else would be a good option? Danilo. Like I do like him, the player that we've been linked with from Palmeiras. I do like Danilo. Those are the two that I would look at. I still think you need to have somebody that has the athleticism and the robustness to actually get into a challenge and drop into the back line and help the defense, but somebody who can pass the ball, that has something about them on the ball. And I think that's what's kind of missing when I see people saying like we should just get this central defensive midfielder, this one. I'm like, but can they play ball though? Like the whole thing, like that player has to be able to play ball. And one thing that I saw from Danilo in particular is that the boy can pass the ball. The boy can pass the ball. It would be strange because he's left footed, and I feel like, okay, so is our whole midfield going to be left footed? But beyond that, like, I think he would be a great player to add to a squad that does not need to get smaller. It needs to get bigger, and we need to add more quality and not remove quality. Like, do you know what I'm saying? But so I almost think selling Thomas Partey would be counterintuitive to what we're trying to do, especially if we get into the Champions League. So those would be my two options, Caicedo or Danilo. And I would keep Thomas Partey. And if he plays less games, he probably won't get injured as much. But that's always been my feeling on that. And this is kind of in the same family of those questions. Do we need to sign Douglas Luiz in January? I mean, there's rumors out there that he's told his friends and family that, he wants to move to Arsenal in January. I don't know what would change Aston Villa's mind from the beginning of the end of the transfer window to January to sell him, because if they needed him then, if they needed him now, they'll probably need him then. And I think they're prepared to let him leave on a free. So I don't see us getting him in January. But if it came down to would I rather bring in Douglas Luiz in January or bring in Danilo in January, because Danilo would probably be more attainable in January because they won't be playing. I think it's in they have another competition that they play in that Palmeiras just bombed out of, and so they won't need him in January per se. I would go for the longer term, higher ceiling option in Danilo over Douglas Luiz. I do think Douglas Luiz is a good player that at the moment would be a better option than Elneny, but I think he would never be able to take Thomas Partey's place eventually. And that's kind of what you want, is you want somebody who in 2 or 3 years could actually be like Rodri was to Fernandinho. I think that's more what you're looking for than anything else. And so I would say bring in Danilo over Douglas Luiz, but do we need to address that in January? I do think so, because we're going to be playing loads of games. Players are going to get injured, and the last thing we want is to be talking about injuries at the end, the business end of next season, or of the season again. Like, we don't want to be talking about it again. So I do think that Arsenal need to address it, but I would imagine that because we didn't get him in the summer, we probably wouldn't get him in January, because I do think he was kind of stopgappy. Like, he definitely was the second option behind Danilo. So if they can get Danilo, get him instead, because he could eventually take over for Thomas Partey. Douglas Luiz could not. Let's see what you guys are saying. C-Dub says Gerrard is desperate to keep him. Exactly. I don't see them changing their mind in January. I think they were prepared to let him leave on a free. And I wouldn't want us to revisit it. Like, it was a last ditch effort, which I understand. It was a panic buy type of thing, even though we've been linked with him before. But if Danilo is available and he was your number one option to bring in, just get him, instead. So yeah. Mohammed saying Declan Rice. I don't think Declan Rice is an option for Arsenal in any way, shape, or form, in any reality or anything. I just cannot see him in Arsenal uniform or Arsenal kit. He just, and he's going to cost a lot. So I'm not sure Declan Rice is on the cards. I know a lot of Arsenal fans love him, but I just don't see it. Like, I can't see it. Maybe I need new glasses, but I don't see it. Let's see. Um, Coupe de Grace says, I think the squad needs an out and out six as a backup to Partey and also to screen the back four when we have that lead. My shout is Limer from RB Leipzig. I kind of hear what you're saying. Like, I do hear what you're saying. Like, some people just want like a number six, a nailed on number six, somebody that's like more of a destroyer. I just feel like if you could get the best of both worlds, why wouldn't you do that instead? So you can use them in multiple scenarios and not just as somebody that can come in to save us in the last 10 minutes of a game. I'm very against bringing in a six that cannot play ball. That's me. Like, if they're just there and basically they can do the El Nani job, then why bring them in? Um, Even if it's at a better level, I would prefer to get somebody who can play ball. Those players cost more, but I think in the long term you get more out of them. So yeah, let's see. Uh, Jet next door says the guy at Crystal Palace. If you're talking about Czech Decore, looks very good. He's definitely somebody that mirrors quite similarly to Thomas Partey in that he can do the tackling and he's athletic enough uh, to do the defensive work, sit on his own, all that kind of stuff. But he can play ball, like he can actually pass and play balls in between the lines. And I do think that we have missed the balls in between the lines. Like in the last couple of games, we just haven't been able to thread the needle. And so Thomas Partey does that very well. And we need somebody else who can do it too, because he's really the only player in our team that can do that from deep. Like he's the only player that can do it. Gabriel does a really good job at playing balls in between the lines from the back line. But beyond that, the players that we have, they don't really have that level of, being able to pass it with the vision in between the lines to somebody with the pace and power that we need. And so, yeah, Czech Decore definitely does that. Let's see. CeeLo says Partey needs to become a backup. I don't see him as a pivotal player, always injured. We need a replacement. Yeah, I mean, you can say a replacement, you can say another option. I do think that we would not be as worried about it um, if there was somebody else there that we felt comfortable playing that role. Maybe that means that he does become a backup player, but I feel like unless the player that we bring in is better than him, he will always start as long as he's fit. You know what I mean? So I get people being really frustrated with Thomas Partey, but if there was somebody that could play the games that he should, like there was games last season where I just thought, does he need to be playing this game, like Norwich away, Norwich home, games like that? If you could have somebody else play those games and he plays the bigger games, I don't think we'd have that big of an issue with it. The issue is he's not fit enough. And then so now we want to get rid. But I actually think that's going to weaken our squad. That's just me. Because if you replace him and then you still have Sambi, you're actually weaker. So why not keep him? And you're not going to get rid of him on those wages. I'm telling you that right now. C-Dub says Partey doesn't even feel like an Arsenal player at the moment. He's never available. Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. Here's a good question from Troy. None of our Brazilian players made the Brazil squad for the upcoming friendlies. What's your views on that, Jess? Personally, for me, I have no problem with it. Limit the risk of getting injured. So I had a full-blown panic attack when this happened. No, I'm just joking. But like seriously, I was worried because I just thought, so not really for Martinelli, because my personal opinion is that he's on the fringes of that team and he's not quite nailed on to be a part of that squad at the moment because of the players that already play in that position. So those are my feelings on that. But in terms of Gabriel and Gabriel Jesus in particular, it worried me because the whole point of having a do not it's a benefit of having a do and having this Brazilian core is that Arsenal is a good place for Brazilians to come and essentially make that squad. That's it. Gabriel Jesus also left Man City. Not He wanted playing time, but also playing time to make sure that he makes that team. So it did worry me, like we don't want Arsenal to be looked at as a place where if you go there, you don't make the squad. And so that was my initial feeling, was that, what does that mean, for the future of Arsenal and this Brazilian contingent that we're trying to bring over? You don't make your national team. What the hell? Why are you here? So um, that worried me. But then, some credible Brazilian journalists came out and kind of reassured that, like, Gabriel Jesus is nailed on for the squad, and that this was an opportunity for them to look at Firmino, Pedro, and somebody else, Matthias Cunha, maybe. It was an opportunity for them to look at those players, and that for Gabriel, he's the fourth, and then for the fifth, they're looking between Ibanez and Bremer. So that made me feel a little bit better, but I still have it in the back of my mind, like, was this something that they spoke about ahead of time? We know that Tite was at the game against Fulham, and he was there with Adu. And so, did they speak about it? Like, okay, well, if you want to look at these players, then can you remove our players so that they can play our games and rest? If they're a shoe-in for the team, or did he watch that Fulham game and say, I don't want them on the team? What is it? Because I do think, out of all of the performances that we've had, Fulham might have been the most clunky from Gabriel Jesus and Gabriel. So yeah, it does worry me a little bit, just because of the whole point of having building this core and having the relationship with Sao Paulo and things like that, is they have to get on the national team. It's so important for Brazilian players to make that team. Tim talked about it, like, on Twitter as well, Tim Stillman, that these players live and breathe to make the World Cup squad. So if you don't make it, it's like, um, so I'm a little bit worried about it, but at the same time, I want to believe that Gabriel Jesus is going to make the team. I don't think Firmino has done much to make that squad, you know what I mean? And so we'll have to see what happens, but it is friendlies, and in the qualifiers, our boys were there. So our boys were there for the qualifiers. These guys are here for the friendlies. It's the last moment for Tite to see people before he chooses the final squad. He praised Gabriel Jesus in his press conference, and also said that it was a chance for them to see other players. So I'm hoping that out of everybody, he's the one that I'm most like, he has got to make that squad. It will break him, you know? So yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on it, but I don't want to get too worked up about it until it happens. But on the Arsenal side, it does help us, because then those players are not playing meaningless friendlies. And I do think our players in the past have played too many meaningless friendlies. I do think that we do need to be smarter and speak to the FAs and be like, if you don't need to use our players, then don't use them, because we need them. I think Saka is a good example of that. Southgate got his clutches right onto Saka and was like, you're going to play every game. While other players were resting for their teams. I remember Andy Robertson didn't play some friendlies for Scotland, and Tierney went out there with his ass and played. So I think we do need to be smarter. Friendlies, our players don't need to be the stars of the friendlies, but we want them there for qualifiers, and we want them to make the squad overall, because it's a good look for Arsenal. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, I definitely was, like, shocked. Like, I really was very, like, worried. Very, very worried. Amira says, is Big Gabby's form worrying you? This isn't me wanting him out, but I try Saliba and White for the second half of PSV, maybe. Like any other player, if you're not on form, you'll be dropped for a while. Am I worried about his form? Well, I put this question out there on Twitter, and it got a mixed response around whether or not we worry about Big Gabby being ran into the ground, or just not having enough of a break. He does play every game because there's literally nobody else to replace him. And Pablo Mari was not trusted last season. And so Gabriel played the season prior. He played Premier League. He played the Premier League games. No, he played the European games and Pablo Mari played the league games, which was like, oh my goodness, because Gabriel should never have been playing below Pablo Mari. But then Pablo Mari was terrible, and then he played the next season. He played with Ben White almost every single game, and there was no replacement for him. And now he's going into this season with playing more games and also doesn't have anybody to replace him. So there's nobody even really for us to drop him for. And I get the idea of putting Saliba and White, but I just don't see that in the Premier League. Like, I just don't see it unless Gabriel is injured, because Arteta loves his balance of having a left footer on the left side and a right-footed player on the right side. So I don't think it would be that big of a deal to play those two together, but I don't think Arteta would do it. But is his form worrying me? Not really, because this is who I know Gabriel to be. I just feel like he's going to have these moments in him most of the time. I think he's kind of a Kashoni in a way, where when he's good, he's really, really good. But when he has those moments, they're there and they're big, and, it is what it is. And so I understand that the fan base is worried about Gabriel, feeling like we need to replace him, feeling like we need to play other players together, blah, blah, blah. But Big Gabby also scores goals. He also is still, for me, our best defender, like our best one-on-one defender. He, by all accounts, for me, is pretty reliable on the ball and off the ball. And he just has moments, and maybe those will smooth out, maybe they won't. Maybe as he gets older, they'll smooth out, maybe they won't. But I think ultimately, like, when you look at the pros and the cons for Gabriel, the pros outweigh the cons. And there's not a lot of players like him out there on the market. I see people putting this player, this player, this player. We could just get this guy, this guy, this guy. And I'm like, but still, like, they're still not as good as Gabriel, or what it would cost to bring them in wouldn't be worth it. So yeah, it's one of those where I feel like he might need a mental break. Like, he might need a couple of games just out where he doesn't, like, he played against Zurich. He shouldn't have had to play against Zurich. He shouldn't have had to play against Zurich. Like, we should have played somebody else or had somebody available to play instead of him. Like, he needs to be able to sit, for a game or two. But yeah, like, my feeling, and this is not something that I know for sure because I don't know the future, but I feel like this is who he's going to be. That's my feeling. If they smooth out, it smooths out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But ultimately, Gabriel, for me, is still a part of this group, is still somebody that I feel like is a starter, is still the starting left-sided center back next to whoever else. And I just prefer to stand by him in these moments than chop him down because when he's really good, he's really, really good. And so, yeah. And I just don't feel the same. There's some players that get like an unlimited amount of backing from the fan base, no matter how poor like they play, no matter how many dips in form they have. But then there's other players like Gabriel that don't get the same treatment. They just don't. Like, it's just, oh, we need to get rid of him. We need to get rid of him, move him on. And I just don't believe that that's how we should be. Maybe let's treat Gabriel like we did Saliba. Let's treat Gabriel the way that we treat Saka. Every player has bad bouts of form, but I remember there's at one point Gabriel was unplayable, last season. And so let's hope he gets back to that form. Zach 10 asked, by the end of the season, if Jesus doesn't convince with the number of goals he scored, would you look to buy a world-class striker who's more ruthless? I like Gabriel Jesus left wing cutting in. No, probably not. Because I think he's going to convince. I think the goal from Arsenal, here's the thing, is that I think we are still caught up in the idea that we need a striker that's going to score 25, 30 goals a season and going to carry this team. What we need is goals from multiple players. That's what we need. And right now we don't have that because we're waiting for Martinelli and Saka to basically become Mane and Salah. Like, that's basically what we're waiting on. We need them to step up. We need Odegaard to step up. And so if you have all of those players carrying their own weight, and then you have other players from midfield, defenders, other players chipping in, Nketiah, Vieira, these players, then we don't have this issue. The reason why we're going to look at Gabriel Jesus is because maybe Martinelli and Saka haven't closed the gap just yet. And so I don't expect Gabriel Jesus to score those goals. And I don't think he necessarily needs to score 25, 30 goals a season. What I do think is that Saka and Martinelli need to be more ruthless, but it just may be just a season away from that level of development. Saka just turned 21, I think, like the other day. He's still so young, you know? And so he just turned 21 the other day. Martinelli, I think he's 21. Yeah, 21. So for me, it's just a matter of like, everybody needs to be chipping in. I think that's what we're getting to as a team. So I wouldn't bring in a world-class striker because I actually feel like we have bigger needs this coming summer. I think we need to if Martinelli and Saka are not going to have the goals, I actually think it would be better to bring in wingers that can bring those goals. That's what I would be looking to do. So instead of just having Saka and Martinelli, I would look to maybe bring in somebody that's more ruthless as a winger. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's probably what I would do instead of bringing in a world-class striker and then moving Gabriel Jesus out of his position. Yeah, that would be my thought. And then making sure that whoever replaces Granit Xhaka has goals in him. Because that's the thing, is like, if the person's next to Odegaard had more goals in him, so if in a season you could rely upon Granit Xhaka to score 8 goals, Martin Odegaard is going to score 10 to 15 goals. Saka was going to score 15 goals. Martinelli would score 15 goals. Gabriel Jesus would score 15 to 20 goals. We're not having this problem. We're not having this discussion. And when you look at the way that the team is starting to be fleshed out, I think the main concerns are the player that's going to be playing behind Thomas Partey, the player that's going to take over from Xhaka, because that position has changed. That player needs to have goals in it. We don't actually have that player just yet. And then wingers, wingers that are not Saka and Martinelli that can score goals. I think that's a bigger need than to spend 80 million on a world-class striker and move Gabriel Jesus out of his position. That's what I would do. But some people still want a world-class striker. They still want that player centrally that's going to score 25 to 30 goals or guarantee it. I have this weird feeling that like that player doesn't exist, because the only player that I know that can do that is maybe like Holland, Kane, like these guys. And so if you can name me somebody in the Premier League that you feel like is going to get that number of goals that we can get, or somebody in world football, let me know who that is. But I don't actually think that player is out there. I think we need goal scoring wingers. Either Martinelli and Saka need to become those, or we need to bring in other players to do that. Jovi says, you can see this season that Eddie is learning some of the shielding from Jesus in this season. Last season, he never had this as a part of his game. And Nketiah has raised his game. And I get that, like, there's still a reservation around the fan base to accept Eddie Nketiah as this backup striker. But there's not a lot of teams out there that have a number 2 striker that's just as good as the number 1. Like, I feel like it's a misconception that your number 2 striker is just as good as your number 1 striker, and you just have him chilling and he's just going to be okay. Like, what we need from Nketiah is for him to be reliable in those cups. As long as he's in those cups, he's scoring goals and getting us over the line, I think we're fine at the moment. I'm not really sure why there's such a focus on Eddie Nketiah at the moment when he's clearly improved and he's what we need to back up Gabriel Jesus for where we are right now. But yeah, I get why some people are still not into him, because they wanted Vlahovic or Skamaka or Osimhen. Those players weren't sitting on the bench. Whereas says, letting Osimhen go to United will make Arteta's decision not to keep Balogun for squad depth look like a rushed one. What does Osimhen have to do with Balogun, though? letting Osimhen. So there is no letting Osimhen go to United. We have these things like built up in our head, like we let Basuma go to Spurs. We let Bruno Guimaraes go to Newcastle. As much as those moves may have annoyed me, like we didn't let them do anything. And just because the fans want a player doesn't mean that when they go somewhere else that the club has done you dirty in some way. But Arteta's decision not to keep Balogun for squad depth looked like a rush decision. Balogun needs to be out there playing football. The player that you're seeing for that's playing in France right now doesn't exist sitting on Arsenal's bench. He needed to go out and play games. All those players that people wanted us to keep around for squad depth just so that we can hoard all of our talent, like the reason why they look so good is because they're out there doing their thing, and they wouldn't be doing that sitting behind Eddie Nketiah and Gabriel Jesus. So I'm not sure why Osimhen is connected to Balogun in any way, and how the club is letting United get Osimhen. But like basically what you're saying is that we should have kept Balogun because he's better than Eddie maybe, and he's out there scoring goals, and we should have kept him, and he's been done dirty. If you ask Balogun if he's been done dirty, I'm sure he would say something different because he's out there scoring goals, living his life. Like, I don't get it. I'm confused. Blaze says, "Good morning, Jess. Good morning to you as well. What are your thoughts on Martinelli? Maybe won't be selected for the World Cup." Them's bees the breaks. That's how that Brazil has so many options. I really think people have to like remember that as much as some of these players maybe you don't rate, there's players that are in front of Martinelli at the moment. And when you look at the attacking talent that they have, Rafinha, Antony, Neymar, Vinicius, um, there's so many options that they could look at. And so Martinelli, I think, is just on the edges. Like he's just on the edges. And he's so young that he will get another opportunity, but it just may not be this one because of how many players are there that have already kind of been in the team for a little bit longer than him. So I actually wouldn't mind if he was not selected. I know it would kill him. It would, but he wouldn't play. Like that's another thing is that I don't think he'd play a lot of minutes, and so would I prefer him to just be like at home, you know, for some weeks, training and being safe and all that kind of stuff, probably. So Martinelli, I'm not particularly worried about because he's 21, and by the time the next World Cup comes around, he'll be in his prime, and he'll probably be a world class forward, and hopefully still at Arsenal. But the only player that I'm worried about is Gabriel Jesus. That's it. If he doesn't make it, it'll crush him. Because the next World Cup that comes around, he'll be 29, and who knows what he'll be doing. So yeah, for me, it's not really an issue with Martinelli not going. It's the other ones, to be honest. Oh, I forgot about Richarlison. Richarlison is also a player that they really rely upon and really like. So yeah. Let's see. Oh, Rodrigo also. There's so many options. There's so many options. Um, let's see. Cap says Arsenal should be kind of happy if he doesn't go to a mid-season World Cup. And we're gonna have quite a few players that don't go. Tierney's not going, Zinchenko's not going. There's gonna be some players that don't go. Ben White may or may not make it. I think he should, but you know how Southgate is about his center backs and which ones he chooses and which one he doesn't. And he always has tons of right backs. So will he choose Ben White? We don't know. So Ben White may not go. He's kind of on the fringes. We know ESR won't go because he's not fit enough to make the squad. I'm not trying to be shady or anything like that. Xhaka will go. Thomas Partey will be gone. So there, Sambi probably won't go. So we will have some players that don't go, which might benefit us. But it's also like, how do they stay fit? Things like that. So there's some other, challenges to overcome as well. Let's see. Kafunso says, once we get the right quality in midfield to add to Partey is when you'll see us as a solid top four competitors. We needed a midfielder and we needed the winger. Like we needed those and we didn't get either one of those. And it's already starting to like, oh, if we could have had this player, if we would have had this player. And I get Fabio Vieira is supposed to fill in for both of those positions. But we know the midfielder that we're looking at is somebody that can play in Xhaka's position or play in Thomas Partey's position now. And the winger is more of a 1v1 type of winger. We looked at Rafinha and we looked at Pedro Neto. And the thing that both of those players have is the one-on-one ability. And so we have not addressed that. So maybe Arsenal does do that in January. I know a lot of people are hoping and assuming that it's going to happen because there's already rumors out there that we're going to go back in for Danilo and we'll go in for Mudryk and all of that. But I would just say temper your expectations. We know how Arsenal is, and they tend not to operate in the January transfer window. They want, and in January, it's even more difficult than the summer window. So do I believe that we're going to go after players? No. But would I hope that we would be smart enough and do it? Yeah. So I know some people, like I can see it already, that there's an assumption that we're going to go in and bring in that midfielder and that winger in January. And you've been an Arsenal fan long enough to know that it probably is not. It's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee. Yeah, Odegaard will be missing. He won't be at the World Cup, but I get what you're trying to be funny. I get that. Captain Crimbo says, honestly, do you think this chasing a backup for Partey is chasing unicorns and we should be looking at a tactical alternative when Partey is out? He can't be replaced, in my opinion. No, I think if you're looking for that player and they're in their prime, you won't find them or you won't be able to afford them. But if you look for that player now and they're about 22 years old and you can bring them in, somebody like a Caicedo or a Danilo for somewhere around 30 to 40 million, then you'll probably be fine. I don't think we need to bring in a tactical alternative to Thomas Partey. I think we need to bring in somebody that can do the same thing as Thomas Partey. That's my feeling. Maybe they're a little bit different. Thomas Partey is not the best, or so I've been told, not the best at maintaining the tempo. And he always wants to go forward. Maybe you want to get more of a tempo setter than Thomas Partey, but what you don't want is somebody that can't play ball. I don't want somebody that's just going to be I don't think that makes sense for us, because ultimately, if you're going to spend 30 to 40 million, don't you want it to be somebody that long term can actually take over for a player that's so central to everything that you do, versus bringing in somebody that is just going to be a tactical shift for 20 minutes there, 30 minutes there. I just don't really see why that would be beneficial to us, especially if you're going to have to pay the same amount, So for me, it's about, and I don't think it's a unicorn if you're looking for somebody that's 22, 23 years old. I think if you're looking for somebody that's 25, 26, 27 and been doing it, then yeah, it's probably a lost cause because you're not going to want to pay that much. Let's see. Ayanle says Caicedo for 50 million. I would do it. I'm afraid, like, the one thing about Caicedo now that Graham Potter is gone to Chelsea is that I feel like that's the most natural path for him, unless they decide, not to go for a midfielder like that. But we may not be able to bring him in, but he would be somebody that I would look at because he can actually play ball, and so can Danilo. But you can't just get somebody out there that's just going to win the ball back and just pass it to the next guy. I don't think that's enough for what we're trying to do, but that's just me. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. There's 170 of you guys in here, which is great. More than I thought, to be fair, because I know it's a different time, but yeah. Lloyd says, hey, Jess, with no EPL games scheduled for this weekend as well, I think Arteta needs to name a strong team for the PSV match. So yeah, like the PSV match, I mean, if it does go ahead, I think we should go strong, because PSV, I think the thing about Bodo Glimt that I'm noticing is that they tend to pick off points. Like they're not as bad as I think I'm assuming that they are, because I don't know much about them. But my assumption is that PSV will be our biggest competition, and we don't want to come second in the group. Like, we don't want to come second in the group. So I would want to see a stronger team, especially because maybe we don't play another game until October. So yeah, naming a strong team would be great. Um, and for Fabio Vieira, his first game as a gunner, what I would say is that I think some people were harsh, you know, because he wasn't like mesmerizing or anything like that. But it's tough to be mesmerizing when you've just come back from an injury. He just came back from a foot injury. He didn't have a preseason, and so we need to give him a chance to, get acclimated. And he actually looked better against Manchester United than he did against Zurich. But I think game state played a part in that. But I also thought he was playing with a better team. Whereas, like, when he was playing with Arsenal versus Zurich, the midfield was so weak. Like, it just was. Like, when you have Sambi and Xhaka and him, it wasn't it wasn't it wasn't midfielding the way it probably should have been. And the best players weren't out there. And I think you look better when you play with better players, obviously. So I actually I thought it was a promising debut. I thought he did a lot of good things. I thought whatever little free kick routine him and Martinelli cooked up didn't work. Don't do it again. But I thought it was a good first full look at Fabio Vieira, and you could see what he wants to do. And he's going to be kind of like, and I hate to make this comparison, but he's going to be kind of like Bruno Fernandes, I think. Not like in the bad way, but kind of in a good way. So I think he's somebody that's going to float around. I think you're going to see him pop up on the right wing, on the left wing, in the center, and a little bit deeper to try to start play. And I think he's somebody that will score goals and will try the difficult passes. I saw him try so many difficult passes in that Zurich match, and they didn't quite come off. And I know people don't like that because it's like, oh, you lost the ball. But when it does get through, you're going to get the opportunity that we got that Marquinhos scored. So I think Fabio Vieira is going to be a little bit like Bruno Fernandes. Probably not as annoying, but I think he's going to have a little bit of that same, like, I'm just going to go all over the place and make things happen. I'm playing the number 10, but I can be out on the wing or in the half spaces. I'm going to operate deep. I'm going to come, and be all over the place. I think that's what he's going to be like. And personally, as annoying as he is, I think Bruno Fernandes is a very good player. And so if Fabio Vieira was anything like him, I think that'd be a good thing, to be honest, because he scores goals. Um, let's see. Let's see. Blaze says Fabio Vieira played good against Zurich. I don't mind what football Twitter experts said about his debut, but it's all connected to the transfer window and not getting somebody else, not getting Tielemans, not getting Douglas Luiz, not getting Basuma, not getting this player. It's we spent 30 million on a player, we have not seen him, and he needs to be the answer and make me feel like we did the right thing in the transfer window. And so there was always going to be a harsher analysis on Fabio Vieira off of the back of not bringing in another midfielder. But for what he is, I think he's going to be really, really good. And for people like, oh, well, he can't be that good because he got sold. That's stupid, because if that's the case, then no players that move teams are any good because they got sold. Strange take. Very strange take. Where it says underestimating Trossard is so disrespectful. Don't know what you guys are talking about, but I think Trossard is very, very good. I do. It's strange that he hasn't gotten a big move, but maybe he will. Who knows? Jay Walker says, there are new Caicedos, Decores, Danilos every 12 months. We shouldn't act desperate over them. But there's not, though. Like, if we're saying that, like, defensive central midfielders that can actually play ball come all the time, that's not true. That's not true. I mean, there's always somebody that, can do something similar, but we shouldn't act desperate. I agree with that. But I think if they have a little bit of extra, like what I've seen from Danilo is that those balls that he plays in behind are like pinpoint. They're like perfect. And he can do them quickly. He can also evade pressure through his dribbling. His ball progression is quite good, and he can put in tackles and cover ground and do things like that. Caicedo, kind of similar. His passing range is not as good, but he can do it. Decore, very similar to Thomas Partey. Those players do not come around all the time. You get Basumas a lot. You get how do I say this without being rude? You get players that can kind of do the destroyer role quite a lot. But often they have to play in a double pivot because they need somebody next to them that can actually do the passing. And so we play with one player, so that player has to be able to do both. They have to be able to do both to some capacity. So I don't think they come all the time. I don't. Three players. Oh, the last player that was like that was Chouameni, maybe, and he went to Real Madrid. I don't think they're that like you see them that often. And I think that's often why they go for such high prices because they don't come all the time. Let's see. Wira says if Chelsea with the promise of UCL football comes in for Tielemans, you guys could put a bid higher than Boli and the Belgian wouldn't suddenly not bother about UEL level of competitiveness of Chelsea with the promises. Yeah, I don't know anything about Tielemans right now. I think Tielemans stays there and leaves on a free. I don't even know if we'll come back in for him. That's the reality. So not sure. I mean, if Chelsea want Tielemans, fair enough. I don't know. I don't think we're in for him. Hassan says, do you think we'll be able to hold on to our pool of talent 5 years from today? Once they are developed, clubs like Barca and Real will be all over them. It depends on how competitive we are. If we're not competitive, they won't stay. Like we have to get into the Champions League. I think that's the bare minimum requirement. You get into the Champions League and then you start fighting for titles, and you have to be a consistent Champions League team. The only thing that we can really I think we can look forward to at least that there's going to be 5 Champions League spots starting next season that you can qualify for. Hold on real quick, you guys. There'll be 5 Champions League spots. So that'll open up another opportunity. But Liverpool will come again. City are not going anywhere. We kind of have to hope that somebody falls off, but we need to be in the Champions League. We need to solidify ourselves there. And I think you can maintain a group of this squad, but don't get it twisted. There will be a moment where we are going to have to sell one of these players. They won't want to stay. They're not going to want to stay at Arsenal for their entire career, and we will have to just get over it. That's what's going to happen. The key is making sure that you always renew their contract, and so when they come to you with some bullshit offer, like Aston Villa wanted 30 something million for Emil Smith Rowe, they have to pay all the taxes and make sure that we get 60, 80, 100 million for these players. Barcelona will come for Martinelli at some point. It's inevitable. Man City will come for Saka at some point. It's inevitable. So if we are fighting and we are in the top 4, we are a Champions League level team, I don't think they'll just leave. But there's going to be a point where we're going to lose some of these players, and that's an inevitability. But the only way that we keep them all together, because let me put it this way. If we don't make Champions League this summer or this season, teams will be on our players this summer. They're already looking at them. So yeah, it's a matter of, do we achieve? And if we can achieve and keep moving the project forward and it doesn't stall, we'll be able to keep these players. A lot of them. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Kafunso says, Vieira impresses me. He ain't shy for the ball and technically superb. Yeah, I think he needs more time, but you can tell that there's something there. I think that there's something there, So yeah, let's see. So we're just gonna end off with this, Bridsley, because you're trying to push through this point and it doesn't make any sense. Vieira hardly played for his club and made most of his appearances from the bench. Can't have been as good as you say. The club obviously didn't and sold him for a really good price. So is that also the case with Vitinha? Because they also sold Vitinha to PSG. I don't see you saying the same thing about him. And he wasn't even like a natural starter. They both came from their academy and they both were brought into the team as they sold players like Luis Diaz. That's how Vieira got his spot. And I think, actually, let me check, because it's not just about starting games. It's about what you brought at that moment. So Vieira, I just want to make sure I get it right. So in the 27 matches that he appeared in, that some of them weren't even starts, as you said, 27 matches, 6 goals, and 14 assists. Sounds like a dead player to me. They sold him because Porto were actually in a financial crisis. So they did need to recoup fees for some of these really talented players that they had. But a player being sold is not always equating to a player being terrible, because I'm sure you wouldn't think that, let's see, was Neymar a crap player when he was sold from Barcelona to PSG? Is Haaland crap because he went from Dortmund to Manchester City? Like, your rationale doesn't make any sense. And so he may not be a world-class player, because that's not what anybody is saying about Vieira, but to say that he's not talented, and to say that because Porto wanted to sell him or sold him, he's crap, you don't make any sense. And this is Ayanle also. Thank you for, because we're going to get them all the way together, is the Porto coach was pissed when he found out Vieira was sold. So I know what you're trying to do. It's, I want to be negative around Vieira because whatever, I have this agenda and blah, blah, blah. But your reasoning makes absolutely no sense. 27 appearances, 6 goals, and 14 assists starting from January, or he's actually started starting games in January when Luis Diaz left. Luis Diaz is 25, Vieira's 22. So I'm sorry, absolutely not. Let's stop. So yeah, it's just, oh, but he was sold, so he wasn't any good. Crap. So yeah, but this was fun. I think also because this is a different time of day, so we're getting different people in, which is interesting. So I actually enjoyed hanging out with you guys, but like some of you guys, I haven't even seen you guys before, really, which is great. But I know some of you guys are subscribed to the channel, which is amazing. So let's see. Tomorrow, no show, but Wednesday, a show, then Friday, a show. So you guys will get shows all three, then Wednesday and Friday. And yeah, I'll be working on getting some guests on for member streams. Guests will be coming on mostly on member streams, just to let you guys know. So yeah, but like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys on Wednesday. Bye, y'all.